golden era. The golden era. I think that was the sweetest spot for real, though, because basketball is a little softer of a game. It requires a little more finesse. It feels more like baseball in the dexterous skill that's necessary to be like top tier in basketball now. Like whereas 90s basketball had a little more of a football feel where your physicality was every bit as important as your ability to fucking take a jump shot. I don't know. It's been fun to watch. It's a hell of a fucking transition. And then, like, in the middle, you get weird characters like the Vince Carters of the world who he's finesse as fuck. And also, he will ride your center's fucking forehead. Like, I don't know. It's a good time.
That's a good start to this podcast. Even before I got to say, welcome in to the Q Crew here at the Tell Me More podcast.
Crew.
Brandon explained why 90s basketball is better. It'll be something I refute every second of this podcast as we talk about the final 2 episodes of the Last Dance documentary, Jordan's final attack on LeBron James. I think we all know that's the only reason this happened right now. I believe he called the commissioner.
I think it's 2 volleys. I think he's taking an attack on 2 fronts. He's taking a shot at LeBron on the I am the GOAT thing, and then I think he's taking a shot at that 73-9 Warriors team, because what they say, it don't mean a thing if you ain't got the ring.
I guess that's fair. Those do both line up, so you might be right on that. It's a 2-for-1 deal. But it was perfect timing. No matter when all these things happen, you're talking a documentary that just sat in the vaults forever, that Jordan was told that until he gave the okay, this could just be a glorified like home video. Like that was kind of the pitch to get them to agree to do
until
this
he died, and then they was gonna release the shit anyway. But you know how it goes.
But I think it was great timing. It gave us all something to do. I think we're all excited. So I think the first thing we'll start with is just kind of going around and figure out how everybody watched this documentary, because I know a lot of you guys had to do the binge watching at the end to catch up to jump in on this. I watched everything about 2 days late. I got none of the live footage. Did anybody watch any of the episodes live on Sunday nights?
Every Sunday night. Yeah. It was funny because like my normal Sunday nights, I might have other stuff to do, but the last 2 months I've had nothing. And so I'm like, okay. It also doesn't hurt. Now that I live in Mountain Time Zone, it was like 7 to 9 p.m. So I could watch it before bed because I can't stay up as late as I used to. And so I just, every Sunday night I was tuned in, and I really liked episodes 9 and 10, just that extra footage of the Bulls Jazz. I mean, obviously 97, the flu game, and then 98. But yeah, no, I was glued to my TV.
Yeah.
Food poisoning.
I guess that's the first place to start. We got 4 people on here. Does anybody buy, not just the flu, because obviously the story is it was food poisoning, so it's just flu sounds better.
That's what he's going with, yeah.
Food poisoning is the story. Does anybody buy that story at all?
No.
Fuck no.
Nope.
Absolutely not.
So which parts make you think?
Die hard, raised Chicago, lived there through all 6 championships. I'm not buying that shit for a fucking second.
So which parts make you think it's a lie? Is it just the simple one? Because without any details, I think, a lot of the rumors are that it's a hangover game more than a flu game. But like, once they had the story, they didn't need a story to just say it wasn't a hangover and to say it was a flu or food poisoning game. But they have this elaborate story. So either that story happened, or why are all these weird details in a very made-up, rehearsed story that they keep telling over the years?
1, because money. 2, let's be real. Where have you ever been in any city where you can't get a pizza delivered at 10 o'clock at night or 10:30? There's only one place specifically open, and they happen to know that they're getting a call from Michael Jordan specifically. No fucking way. Because if I'm Michael Jordan and I'm that worried about my health, you would never know that you're bringing Michael Jordan food. Why would you take that risk? Especially going into one of these big time playoff games? No fucking way. You know how tight he is. He keeps everything close to the chest. No. No.
Yeah, there's no way Michael's name was on that pizza. Someone else ordered it for him. It was someone else's name. But the fact that 5 delivery guys showed up and pretended that they knew what they were delivering to Michael, nah, none of that seemed. He might have ate a pizza that night, but he also was doing something else.
Look,
I think that's probably the main thing that, like, I guess I could understand just from being, all the stories of Michael's wife. She definitely kept him in line when he's home, but whenever he's anywhere else, he better pretend
right?
like
He
he's
wasn't
doing
at
on the straight
home
and narrow.
though.
But he has
And
to pretend.
the fact
so he
is,
can't even
when you're
say he's doing the normal stuff basketball players do. So everybody
when you're
else
in Salt
had
Lake
token
City
girls.
specifically, you can't get you can't just go party and hit the clubs and hit the bars like you would in
That's
any
true
other
as
city,
well.
because it's fucking Utah. Like, you can hang out with your 4 wives and John Boy, and that is about it. That's all you get. So anything you want to do has to be illegal or extracurricular, because even your booze was. If me buying a bottle of whiskey was going to be illegal, somebody go get me some cocaine, because fucking go big or go home. Mike ain't never been a quitter. There's no way that was. Yeah, if it was food poisoning, it was from the mushrooms. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying
Jeff, what's the most bullshit part of that story?
Man, yeah, the 5 guys showing up, that has to be it. Like, there's no way. Like, the 5 guys show up to your house delivering pizza to Michael Jordan. There's no fucking way that's.
You get beat up in the hallway. You get beat up on the. If we knew that Wiz Khalifa was in Lawrence at one of these hotels and 5 people showed up to deliver his pizza, they would get feet on their neck before they made it out of the fucking door. You telling me the biggest athlete on the planet,
Right.
his people didn't take some kind of, like, you didn't think to yourself, man, that's 5 people delivering a pizza that's about to be eaten by one person.
Does anybody know the name of that pizza company? Because I don't think that was released until like later on either. So they didn't want to give that pizza company a bad name. I think
I would definitely give that pizza company a bad name. If I'm Michael Jordan, I'm burying that bitch and opening a spot there in Salt Lake City, because fuck y'all.
I think
if the story's true.
But if the story's true, then if he gives the name out, that's not ruining the name of that pizza place. That's elevating it. Like, Utah Jazz fans are going to go there every day. They're not giving me food poisoning. They
had our back. They had our back when we needed them most. They saw an opportunity. And they tried. And damn, bro, they tried. You saw Jordan look like that fucking game.
Think of how bad they would have lost if Jordan was healthy. Like, they got one game they lost by 42. They might have lost another one by 42.
Get blown out. That's
So, definitely by the time that story is done, you could have just played the Jordan response to them asking if he pushed off on Brian Russell. Like, that's my response to that story. Like, bullshit.
Okay, so on the note of the push off, was that a push off? Absolutely, 100%. Was it enough of a push off to merit a foul call? Nah. Especially with Brian Russell's momentum already. Obviously, he was digging in because he wanted to stop Mike from doing anything.
Yeah.
He was halfway to the fucking stands by the time Mike gave him that little baby push. He pushed off the same way Odell Beckham pushed off on the greatest catch you've ever seen. Because when he cut arm, he definitely pushed off before he made liftoff. But he was already being interfered with in the first place. So what do you call?
I got to ask you, though, Brandon, if that's not enough for a push-off, how do you feel about the Reggie Miller play?
That was a push-off for sure.
Nope. Because
if that Mike one wasn't a push off, then that Reggie was not a push off.
Jordan pushing Brian Russell is more powerful than Reggie Miller going full force 2 arms at any player. Yeah, that's just a fact. Yeah. Jordan's
I will disagree with you, because if that were the truth, Reggie wouldn't have made it as long and been the man that he was in that fucking league. Reggie was the strongest, skinny little piece of shit. Just the loudmouth, annoying, but them bony ass elbows that like you ever had a person with like karate hands put their fingers in your chest? Like all of that shit is like little iron tips. it's not the hardest, the biggest force, but it's enough to make you stop doing what you're
but
doing.
if he used the elbows, that's not a foul. That is just a good box out, and he got open for a shot.
I feel like the Reggie Miller push off in the Jordan
you could call that now. You couldn't call that then. There's no way you call that.
I feel like in 2020, the refs might blow their whistle. In
For sure.
97-98, that was just part of the game.
The ref would get booed out of the building if he called that.
Miller's looked a little more obvious, but it also was when the ball wasn't inbounded yet. So that may have had something to do with it. Jordan's there was contact. Was it a foul? No.
I agree with Colin 100%. That like Reggie Miller went chest to chest with Jordan and just pushed off on him. He went flying like 3 feet, and Jordan's a strong man. You won't go flying that far unless it's your own momentum, like it was with that.
Jordan didn't actually move. He just went. His body went
He
backwards.
went pretty
His
far
feet
back.
His feet stayed in place. Like it just looked horrible because Jordan's going whoop, and
Also,
Reggie
you gotta
shot in the other
remember,
direction.
The same way that Jordan gets the benefit of the doubt from the refs, Reggie also gets a certain level of benefit of the doubt from the refs because he is a big ticket player and also a.
I don't know what
You
he said.
froze.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Big ticket player. That's where to cut the audio. He'll come back someday. It's exciting. All right, so
Maybe
Colin.
after COVID-19's over.
That little extra bit that gives pause, and if you have to wait too long to blow the whistle, you don't blow the whistle. That's refereeing 101.
I think that actually Freeze is going to like queue up very well. This is going to work out great. Reggie Miller, all-time shooter list. We're not going to have a full-fledged argument. Just keep it short here. So if you're going like a top 5, where does Reggie Miller rank?
3, 4.
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
Who's 1 and 2, 3, 4? Name them.
Steph. Jesus. And then Reggie plays around somewhere with Larry Bird for me. Larry was just, he's so long. It's like, and KD is my number 5. He earns himself some hardware on his own. Then I could slide him clean up the list to fucking 1 or 2. KD can shoot with any fucking body, but as it stands, yeah, I'd put Reggie at like 3 or 4, somewhere around ballpark Bird level. Better 3-point shooter for sure, but Bird was just so fucking long that he could just, the same way that KD is nasty. What do? He's 7 feet tall. He's got million mile long arms. Even if you do jump out and reach for it, you're still a foot short, and he's jumping for the shot. So it's not like trying to block a 6'5" dude shooting from there who you would expect to be shooting from there. You got this, and again with Larry, 6'9" or however long he was, it's a special thing. The shitbag hook was nasty too.
Anybody you two guys feel was left off the list? Anybody that deserves to crack the top 5?
No, I feel like Steph and Reggie are at the top. But I agree with Brandon. I think KD throughout the course of his career does Oklahoma City, Golden State,
and God.
Even when he picks up with Brooklyn, I think Durant just can shoot from anywhere. So
there's nothing you can do about it. That's the big. He's as accurate as anybody else, but the fact is, you have a chance to block the shot of Steph. Steph's only 6'3". You can get a hand in his face.
Yeah.
You can't get your hand in KD's face. He's already taller than you. And if you're out there that far guarding him, you're probably not one of the bigs, so you're not big enough. That's like me trying to go block Joel Embiid's shot. It's physically impractical. Not impossible, but not realistic.
I think the interesting one that's not on the list, I don't disagree with that top 5, but I think it's Klay Thompson's a tough one because he is a pure shooter.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you actually were trying to do a 3-point competition with all the people you name, I think Klay is
probably finishes number 2 behind Steph.
He might be number 1, like in terms of just threes against Steph. Like he's probably the better lock. Like when he's on, he doesn't miss, particularly when it's just about shooting and not about dribbling. And in the last few years, he's kind of added the dribble in there. But when you're just going as a shooter, Klay Thompson might be the best of the bunch, and people don't really put him into that that grouping. And then KD, I think it's just obvious that he is that elite of a shooter, and then he doesn't even get his due for how good of a player he is, because he's down on a list back there behind Steph right now. And you're like, Kevin Durant's played 11 years. Like, he's got a career that rivals Larry Bird's in everything but the championships.
And that's the only thing. The only knock that I had was shit. I want to see, because Larry was the rock. Larry was the thing that pulled his team to the championship, whereas Kevin Durant, he was the best basketball player on that championship team, but he wasn't the reason that they won that chip. They would have won if he was there or not. They proved that already before. Did he make them better? Absolutely. But
he made them unstoppable. So we didn't even get to figure out how good anybody was those 2
we
years.
We have no idea how good that team actually was, simply because I'm so glad LeBron James exists, because if not for him, this whole Jordan conversation doesn't get to be nearly as fun, because that Bulls team is no longer the greatest team ever. Because that chip is the big difference. Like I said, don't mean a thing if you don't get that ring. Yeah. KD is a special talent. They told him to pick up weight. He told them to fuck themselves and just pulled up from further away. Like, how do you guard a 7 foot tall dude that can pull up on you from 35? What is the game? It's like trying to make a game plan for Shaq in his prime. Well, he's 7'2" and weighs 320 pounds. Who gonna guard him?
Yeah, I think Kevin Durant's definitely up there on that list. And when you see, you see a documentary like this, and I think immediately your mindset goes to how great a player is, how much they have that impact, but also by having it as a 10-part documentary, you got to see how great the pieces were around him. Mm-hmm. And once again, this is not some argument to try to take away from Jordan's greatness, but it is so important to have those pieces around, because there are great players who sometimes get 0 championships. There are some that could get a couple, and they get them in various situations.
Cough, Steve Nash.
When you have that team around you, as good as it was, and they don't nearly get enough credit for it, that's the thing that can allow somebody like Jordan to get in those moments where he is that closer. He is that unstoppable force down the stretch that everybody is scared to face. And if you don't have that, you don't get those moments with Jordan. If Pippen isn't a top 5 player next to him, and they don't give him credit for being that for his time with Michael Jordan through the 90s, like, he was a top 5 player every year until they finished their last championship. So, like,
in like all categories at that.
Yeah. So until 99 when he leaves, because I know that his back is out when we get to see game 6 there in the 98, but he made sure that team even got to that point. Jordan couldn't have got them over the finish line if Pippen and the rest of that group aren't the best team in basketball.
I think that
Jordan
emotionally,
playing as the great player he had been.
If Pip doesn't come back onto the floor, because even though he didn't make as much of a physical contribution, and Jordan was, quote unquote, carrying the load, which, I mean, the stats don't lie, he was carrying the load. If Pip isn't coming back out onto the floor, I don't think Jordan does that thing. You know what I mean? I don't think that ends the same way. The same way that he always needed his dad and then needed his security guard. He needed Pip not just for the basketball aspect, but because
this is going to be fun. I like when the camera's still going, but the audio doesn't go. Those are my favorite parts. So, yeah.
Sweet pause. I talked all the way through that pause, too.
Yeah, we heard none of it. So we actually saw you moving. Like, your camera did not quite freeze up, just the audio. So, yeah, I think with the way Jordan has all those pieces, that makes me appreciate that much more those seasons when somebody like Kevin Durant doesn't win but is amazing. And watching the early part of the documentaries, the first few episodes, when you see Jordan in the 80s, I always knew what he was capable of. But, Colin talked about this when we talked a few weeks ago. Like, he wasn't as aware of those accomplishments. And I think there's a lot of people that only know of Jordan through the lens of those 6 rings. And while that has given people some very bad arguments for why Jordan is the best, they're missing the best argument, which is
There
what
were
Jordan
7
did at the
whole
80s.
years before he got them rings where he was just
He was still the best.
and
Like, he didn't need the ring to be the best, and people
They
could
weren't
try
winning.
to tear it away from him, but he just was the best. And those like failures early on when they weren't able to beat teams were even more impressive. Those were the type of years that I think a lot of people, Colin included, try to tear down LeBron for. And those are some of the moments that make those wins that much sweeter. Like, without watching Jordan fail early on, like, it's not as impressive when he was able to be perfect for 6 of 8 years in the 90s. Like, that's the thing that builds up to it. You need those failures to appreciate the glory.
The way people
as
treat
much.
LeBron James is absolutely astonishing.
Colin, rebuttal as the biggest LeBron hater in the room?
I don't know if I'm a LeBron hater. He's the best, player in the
hater,
world.
okay.
He's he's the best player of this generation. He's just really good at losing in NBA finals. And obviously, here's the thing. The Golden State Warriors teams that beat LeBron, I'm not worried about that. I'm talking about when Dallas Mavericks, when Dirk and a bunch of scrubs showed up, and LeBron and D-Wade still couldn't beat Dallas. Like,
I feel like you playing Dirk short. First of all, you're gonna put some respect on Big European's name.
Hey, Dirk's a Hall of Famer and he's great, but I was surprised that LeBron. I know it was his first year in South Beach, but that finals is when I was like, wait, really? The Heat aren't going to do it? And they came back and bounced back the following 2 years, and they got 2 rings. But that's just when I was like, because you can't. I'm not going to discredit LeBron for losing to Golden State. It's the
Maverick year.
The Mavericks, and then the Spurs. Not only did the Spurs beat LeBron in his last year in Miami, those were 20, 30-point blowouts. And so that's why I have my feelings about LeBron.
This the thing though, the difference between the LeBron James team versus the Michael Jordan team is that LeBron James is at the end of the day going to end up having to carry this thing whether he wants to or not. Mike always wanted to carry it, with the exception of that one time where he was like, "Hey, yo, Steve, you have one." But like, generally speaking, LeBron doesn't want to have to carry the team. He would prefer that we play a team game of basketball so he can dish this off, and this doesn't have to be his burden all the time. When it comes down to crunch time and it has to be your burden, those are the issues where kind of you start seeing a little bit of quote unquote softness out of LeBron, but that's just because he's still trying to play the same game that he's been playing the whole time. I don't think it ever occurred to him that when it's business time, you can't give the ball to somebody else. It has to be your ball. And I don't think that's a knock on him as a player or a knock on his greatness. It's just the way that he views the game. It's supposed to be a team sport. You should be as important as me. I'll just take all of this Nike money in the meantime.
All right, real quick, I will say that LeBron in the Mavericks finals, that is like the black mark, and it's hard to argue away. The best I got is the same way.
Why can't it just be Dirk being great? Why can't it just be Dirk being great?
Part of it is, and then part
that
of it
man
is.
showed up to every game with an aluminum foil plate of home-cooked food. Let Dirk be great, God damn it.
Another part of it, though, is that it's not just how good Dirk was and what the Mavericks were able to do. It's that LeBron folded. It's not just a bad series or losing to an inferior team. LeBron looked bad, and there is no arguing around it. The best I have is that he was in a series where the thing he needed to be able to do the most was be able to back down JJ Barea. That should have been something he's just able to do at 6'8". But in fairness, Jordan in the 80s had series where he didn't know how to back down, and it hurt him until he bulked up in.
I was saying he was getting his ass whooped by the fucking Pistons and figured his shit out.
And he worked on that. And the difference is we didn't watch Jordan in a situation where that inability, that one hole in his game, hurt him so badly. We watched LeBron go through that in an NBA Finals. What did we see every year after that?
Happen to
LeBron
Jordan, it was just never the
finals
finals.
with the back down. Yeah, we watched it, but not in the finals. We watched LeBron go through that, and then every year after, LeBron it's not just JJ Barea. He doesn't care who it is. He'll start backing
Anybody.
out centers and show you, look, I learned how to do this. And that's, you can say from the negative, but once again, I like to look at it from the positive. What you're able to see him come back from, it made it that much better when you're watching LeBron win
And
playoff
the ability
games
to learn
by
only
back
proves
down
that you're a
step
better
backs.
player. The ability to learn only proves that you're a better player. Like Tim Duncan's game over the course of his entire fucking career. Dr. Fundamental himself. And at the end of the day, there were always, even for a quote unquote big, there were people that were stronger, people that were faster. But at the end of the day, he was better at basketball than you were. Just simply the sport of basketball. It's like Mac is better at basketball, the sport itself. I'm more athletic, but Mac will beat me more times than not, just because he's better at the sport than I am. And Tim did that thing, and he just got better and better and learned to where by the end of the day, he's not. That's why he's able to play a billion years in the league. What do you have, like a 21-year career or something like that? That's stupid.
Getting up there. Yeah.
But like that's incredible. You're playing at the highest level. You're running as a 7-foot tall person for 20 years. Bye-bye kneecaps. I'm 6'4", and everything fucking hurts, and I'm only 30. And I don't play at a pro level. So, like, to be able to keep that up is because he's able to work efficiently. He ain't got to grind and fight you in the fucking paint. He's going to make every single moment that he's down there count. And that's what makes LeBron so special, is that he's been looking at things that way from the moment he came into the league. He could have jumped out and Derrick Rosed us and been the youngest MVP you've ever seen, but then we might not be having this conversation because he would have turned around and Derrick Rosed us with no fucking kneecaps. Love D Rose to death. You know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, Jordan's mental toughness, you can't go against that. Like in the crunch time, when you want somebody to make that play, who do you want, LeBron or Jordan? Like that has to be the question.
That's a no-brainer.
That's a no-brainer. In those mental tough situations, that's who you want. I have to crown Jordan over LeBron.
So this is the best.
Jordan would have never been in a situation where he had to look at J.R. Smith and go, "Hey, yo, what the fuck?"
This is my best counter, though. So, Jeff, you picked Jordan over LeBron. So you have LeBron and Kobe. Who do you go with?
LeBron or Kobe?
Yeah.
I'd go LeBron.
Okay. Colin?
Well, who do I think is the better NBA player with at the end of their careers?
You're in crunch time. Are you going LeBron or Kobe? Pick.
I'm gonna go LeBron.
Okay. See, Colin knew it was a trap. That was good. Good job, Colin. Because the numbers have already spoken.
Kobe's
LeBron
very
is not
close.
that far behind. LeBron's not that far behind Jordan. Kobe's really far back in terms of clutch shots when you actually look at the
Kobe will
numbers.
just pull up. He don't give a shit.
Yeah.
It's going to go in or it's not. It's either it's going to go in and we keep playing, or it's not, and it's not my problem anymore.
Jordan and LeBron took a lot of closing shots in important playoff games, and their percentages are both high. Jordan is a tad bit higher, and we just watched it. There were situations that, they're not even just to close out game sevens. Like, he didn't let you get to the game 7 very often. Like, that was probably the most
you
important
can get
part
to
of that
game
Pacers
7
series.
in the East. He gets game 7 in the East. He had no respect for Western Conference teams. They were not allowed to see game 7 with him.
Yeah.
Oh, y'all the West Side boys? Fuck off.
That was probably the most impressive part of looking at what Jordan was able to do. The fact that he's not facing bums when he makes it to the finals. Like, there were a lot of good teams they had to go through. Were there some tougher teams, tougher competition?
And Malone. Yeah. Stockton and Malone.
That 98
Sean
Jazz
Kemp
team.
and Gary Payton. That fucking 95, 96 Seattle's. Who wants to do? Sean Kemp is like the 90s version of what Zion Williamson is now. Just too big, too fast, too strong. He looks like a linebacker. That's not a fucking basketball player. He thick as shit.
Then after the lockout, Sean Kemp looked like a lineman, but
his prime happened, and then the rest.
His dad bod.
But, all right, so
dad bod on.
That's a good transition. I do want to talk about the Sonics. I know that was back, like, it feels like ages ago, probably like episode 5 or 6, but we have that meme, and I want to, after this, talk about what's the best meme that's come out of this doc. But when Jordan starts to laugh at the idea that Gary Payton slowed him down, who's right or
Gary
wrong?
was in his ass. I watched that series as a child in Chicago. I remember my dad, the rage in that man. You see how excitable I get?
Yeah.
That's me with no filter. He was hot, mad about it. And no, Gary Payton was bodying that man for being undersized as far as the matchup goes. He just completely smothered him. While his numbers still looked okay, like they looked solid, that's pedestrian for Jordan. If you were to tell me that I'm going to put somebody on the greatest basketball player of all time and he's going to go, 20, 21, and 3? Who is going to stand in front of you and tell you Michael Jordan's only getting 17 points tonight? No motherfucking body. That's not a thing. Gary Payton.
His lips are moving.
I'm not even trying to fix this. I ordered an Ethernet cable just because of how bad our pod went last week. And nope, it's on Brandon. I'm going to blame him.
Unstable.
Hey, move closer to your Wi-Fi, will you?
He says it's behind the wall, right?
I'm going to try sliding around. So the issue is between lighting and Wi-Fi. I was closer to the Wi-Fi.
Pick Wi-Fi.
I tried that, but y'all was mad because you couldn't see me.
I feel like that's where you sat last time, and the Wi-Fi was so. You know what? Forget it. So moving on. Jeff, in agreement with Gary Payton, in Brandon's 8-year-old words to his father as he turns and says, "Daddy, why is the glove up in Jordan's ass?" Is that an accurate assessment of how that finals
more
went?
More or less.
I think it's so. I think so.
I was a combo of confused.
I'm not going to
and
disagree
upset.
with that, man. The glove was up his ass.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Hey.
So the funniest part about the Sonics series, the Bulls got up 3-0, and Gary Payton thinks the Sonics would have had a chance if he would have guarded Jordan from game 1. And so that was kind of the funny part of it. Now, Gary Payton was great, like defensive player of the year, like no doubt. But I just think that the Bulls were going to win that series no matter who was guarding Jordan. So
yeah,
now,
I mean, I guess it's how much you think they just won 2 freebies because the Bulls didn't turn it up, which I guess this hits to a bigger point that I have questions about. If Jordan is this ultimate competitor who never turns it off, why are they always dropping games 3, 4, or 2 games in the 3 to 5 section if he never turns it off? He's
because
a closer. He's always close.
Basketball is a team sport. That's why.
So everybody else took a break, and Jordan, the ultimate closer, just couldn't pull it off.
It doesn't have to be everyone else. It doesn't have to be everyone else. Like I said, it's a team sport, and when you get to that high of a level, all it takes is one guy to take the night off, and your entire flow and everything changes. One person to get comfortable, and it's tough to keep everyone motivated for every game, full in, all. Like you saw Dennis Rodman, nigga left to go do fucking WWF events and shit. Like
he came back, he was rebounding like a manimal. His chair shots were awful, but his rebounds were still good. Brandon will respond at some point. Jeff, how do you feel about Rodman's performance? Did he not have his head in the game?
At the wrestling match or during that series?
Either one.
Either one. Both.
Oh,
Either
wow.
or both. I'm talking about Jordan in general basically being a coach on the floor, kind of like we gave LeBron credit for a lot of his career, where Jordan is like, I could go get in these people's asses and
dictator on the
drag them back into shape, or I'll let them have one or two so that I can have my people where they need to be as we go forward. Let them taste defeat and let them know, hey, yo, you don't have to live like this. We can be winners.
It was clear Rodman was going to do what Rodman wanted to do, whether it was go be a wrestler or go leave 48 hours and be back. And he was going to be back.
But he was going to show up when he was going to
He was going to show up when he show up. And Yeah, they
All
still
he
won 6
needed-
championships, though.
All he needed was a coach that knew what level of discipline, which was minimal, but also making sure he stayed in shape. But in terms of not letting him do what he wanted to do, you're not going to get the best Rodman. So Phil Jackson, that might be even better than his mastery of the triangle, which I think he just let Tex Winter do most of the work for him. But, like the rest of it, the being that guru of Zen, definitely was what kept that Bulls team together, which, we get back to this Jordan winning 6 is, the trump card for most people in terms of why they think he's the greatest of all time and why nobody else can really touch it. You don't win 6 if Pippen isn't as good as he is, if you don't make the moves where when you lose Horace Grant, you replace him with somebody like Rodman, when you upgrade from a John Paxson retiring to get a Steve Kerr who's a better shooter, when you continue to restock the cupboard and keep them as good as they are. Like, it's amazing that Jerry Krause became the villain for so much of this documentary, but
Greatest GM ever.
like, without what he did, this team does not win those championships, which once again, I don't think if Jordan wins 1 championship, I don't think it changes where he's at in the all-time greats. I mean, maybe
If
it's the
Jerry
difference
Krause
between being
isn't
untouchable
Jerry
as
Krause,
number
Jordan
1.
is Charles Barkley. If Jerry Krause doesn't get him Scotty, Jordan is Charles Barkley or Karl Malone. He'll be like one of the greatest to ever be like Karl Malone is one of the greatest basketball players ever. Nobody gives a shit about Karl Malone.
I think you do have to win 1, but I do think that Jordan's numbers say he is better than those guys. Like, the championships isn't what said it. The numbers by themselves say that Jordan and LeBron are on a tier by themselves and everybody else is playing catch up. It is the championships that tell you Jordan is the ultimate player. Jordan is the better player. And LeBron would have to run off a crazy finish to 35-40 right now. Like, what he does at that age, he'd have to win some championships and keep performing the way he's
to
playing.
see LeBron go like 31-8-7 through the playoffs at like 38 on
COVID's
his way to
taking that chance
like,
away from
oh
him,
my
man.
goodness. It's a shame. It really is a shame. Damn it, Rudy. Selfish. Fucking
All right,
selfish.
so I did want to pivot back to the idea of the meme. So we got the Jordan laughing at the iPad video. Pretty great. You have Rodman's crazy hand gestures that people have just put in random things too. One of my favorites as a journalist is like when your editor tells you how to reorganize your story and it's just like hands flying all over the place. That one resonates with me a lot. You got Karen, the Pacer fan, which is pretty great because she's not actually in it for that long. And the internet turned her into a person that like who the hell is that? And then
I'm not the only person that caught that immediately. She was pure vitriol, yo.
But like they didn't even have her that long, and the internet turned her into a person. The Athletic had to hunt her down, which kudos to the Athletic. Every time there's somebody in a sporting degree, like who the hell is that? Athletic finds them in a
They
day.
will find out.
The
They do
lady
Sean
knitting at
Evans
the
level
KU football
fucking
game,
work.
Like they found her lickety split lickety. Like I couldn't believe that they pulled that off. Jordan bobbing to the music is the most recent one with the listening to the Walkman and God, the ability for the internet to just throw any song on top of that, whether it's Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, whatever it is, which I don't know if any of those are worse than just like, oh, I'm just listening to Kenny Lattimore. You know, he's my boy.
Right,
Like,
but instead he was listening to fucking Justice's Dance. Do the DANCE 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like just
see, that's why we got Brandon on to actually be able to sing that song when it happened. We couldn't start the pod till he got here. And then the Wozniak shrug, which did you guys hear the story of? Like, I don't even remember if they tell it through the documentary. Like, he became Jordan's like groundskeeper, basically. Like his house in Chicago, like Wozniak is the guy who took care of it up until he died in January.
No shit.
So the ultimate competitor, he looked mad and wanted the guy's money after losing the coin toss. Like they're like good friends, and you know Jordan kept him employed up until he died.
Well, I mean that's Jordan in general. He's obviously got kind of a harsh overall set because, like he said, fucking Republicans buy sneakers too, which I understand wholly why that sits fucked up with the black community. Hi, I'm one of those. And especially being a Chicagoan in the inner city like that, I was like, damn, nigga, you don't care about us. But in hindsight, I understand if he didn't operate the way that he did, there's no way LeBron James gets to open a school in his hometown and then have an entire ESPN interview where he calls the president a fucking bum with another of the best players in the world, and that's not an absolute shitstorm. Like, Jordan walked so that these niggas can run. It's a beautiful thing. It's a tragic thing at the same time, because it's not like he's blind to these things. It's not like he's ignorant to any of these things. It's not like he doesn't know. He's in a position where he's got so much power that his hands are tied lest he fuck this up for everybody. And that's a tricky place to be. I could not imagine holding that kind of power.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's really the particular election that made that extra messed up, because it wasn't just any old just Republican, like, you should speak out. It was like, it was in his backyard, and that guy was not just systematic racism. He was just outright racist in the middle of press conference. And Jordan's like, I don't want a part of this.
I don't want no parts of this.
I need to make sure that LeBron has a better platform
Right, it's
when
like,
he gets here, and I'm
I
just going
can't
to
do
keep
shit
putting
for
money
y'all
in
if
my
I get
pocket.
killed here in North Carolina. So
yeah.
they already took his daddy. Like, you think the people who will come get you don't care who you are. If you're not what they want to see, they will find a way to get you. So the fact that Jordan handled his shit the way that he did, it's almost likened to the way Uncle Luke handled his shit in the music industry back in the day. You couldn't play Pop That Pussy nowhere down in the South. Like, literally, he was getting, like, cops getting arrested at shows left and right. He had to take this all the way up to the Supreme Court. Uncle Luke is the reason that people get to enjoy Eminem's music to this day. Uncle Luke bust all that shit open because he was like, what y'all not about to do is tell me what I can and cannot say in my music. And he did it in such a...
Oh, this was going to be a good one, too. We'll get there. The tough part is figuring out how much of this to keep. I'm excited
to stay in Chicago with that garbage ass contract for that long. If that ain't charity work, I don't know what is.
It's true. And to go on the end of the Uncle Luke thing, also D. Snyder, got to give him credit for allowing us to have extremely explicit lyrics, because nothing's better than him showing up for one of these meetings with the Senate, where they're trying to accuse him of basically Satanism, and he's just sitting there. He's like, yeah, actually, I'm fairly religious. I go to church on Sunday, and honestly, we don't even have bad lyrics in our music. You just don't like me because I wear makeup on stage. And there's very few things better than watching that. But it's amazing how all this ties back into Jordan, who tried to keep himself out of most of the things that were off the court, which is part of the Jordan legend, being able to master the narrative and make it solely about on the court, and not when he's punching teammates, and not why he won't speak out on the different races that are back from where he's from, and just all these things that he found a way to master the narrative. And that's probably why this documentary hits as well as it does, because the career Jordan had was a perfect story. It also helps when you're able to hide the bad parts. It helps when you are in control. And while I don't think Jason Hare, the guy who did this documentary, was doing a bad job of being a documentarian, at the end of the day, it all came down to, you're going to try to make this, Jordan gets the final stamp of approval. And you get funny stories. You get those kind of like back in my day things that are pretty funny. And I want to go down a few of them and figure out
everybody
which
else
ones.
was doing cocaine. I don't know nothing about doing it. Come on, Mike. Fuck out of here.
So which ones are the more overinflated, like, this is how it happened? We have the great idea of Pippen not being anything player until he sprouts up in the middle of college. And, like, it wasn't amazing that he became this great player. And it's like, I know he didn't go to the greatest school, but honestly, like, he was already on a college team. They had to know he could play basketball. They didn't just let him on. Like, lucky that kid grew 6 inches, because otherwise I don't think we could have let him start. You know, you have that story.
Pretending like the Bulls didn't know that Pippen was exactly the tool they needed would be like pretending like the Chiefs didn't know that Patrick Mahomes is the best goddamn quarterback they've ever seen throw a football.
It's like Anthony Davis.
You scout for a reason.
Anthony Davis became a super athlete when he sprouted up to 6'11" because he had the guard skills. But the dude was allowed to start as a guard. Like, he was
already good. Same with Zion Williamson. Like, he was already the part of why he's so dangerous now at this massive size that he is. Because of the guard skills. He was already playing guard in the first place. Then he grew up real fucking tall and started dunking on niggas. That don't mean he can't drop a dime on you in the fucking paint. You getting bigger hands doesn't mean you forgot how to pass a basketball.
So the other two big stories, so you have Jordan not making the varsity team as a sophomore, which I'm just sitting there and I'm like, is that uncommon, particularly in that era where it's not even that you weren't as good as the other players and you got better? Jordan wasn't let on the team because the guy had a policy about not letting sophomores on the varsity team. And so Jordan turns it into this big deal. And then I think the worst one, though,
Jordan and Shaq are both the same way in that way, though, where they just blow up like whatever. Like, Shaq is the type of person that'll pretend that you say, he'll make up something that you said that you didn't say and just drive that into the ground for the next 5 or 6 fucking years.
And the guy was a rookie. You didn't get the schmear from my bagel. That was Shaq's biggest exploit. Is just very upset by all the people who played on his team and didn't do all his work for him. But I think Steve Kerr's is the biggest problem. I think that's bigger than Shaq's bullshit. I think it's bigger than Barkley's. I think
the Steve Kerr punching Jordan in the chest?
No. Because
I believe that one.
No, Steve Kerr didn't get an offer until like last minute, Arizona. You're telling me not a single community college came out of the woodwork. No team said, Steve, come play for us. But one day, Arizona's like, I think you can play D1 basketball, kid. I think you got this.
All of the D2 schools skipped him. They weren't interested in a 6 foot tall, chiseled jawed white dude that could pull up from 30 feet. That doesn't sound like anything you ever want on your basketball program ever.
Now, maybe Arizona was the first D1 school and he wasn't fielding offers from all these shit schools. But the idea that he didn't get an offer till then, and now you're going to have coaches running around telling people, keep fighting to the bitter end because you never know. Steve Kerr made it all the way to the NBA. 4-peat champion. Better than anybody else. Nobody else got to do that except for Bill Russell. Nobody else did that in the modern era. That's how good you can be, even though you barely made it onto a college roster. But it's a bullshit story. That's not what happened. Steve Kerr had to have been recruited.
You see Steve Kerr. You've seen him as a player at multiple different teams. You saw he was always, even if he wasn't an elite point guard at any given point, he was always still very, very good, even at the pro level. And then you see him as a coach. Holy shit. Talk about having confidence in your players and having confidence in your team. Have you ever seen a player pull up from 38 with 17 seconds left on the clock and the coach just like, yeah, like in or out? No, Steph can pull up from across the street and Steve doesn't bat an eye, partially because it's one thing when you have like the kind of the class of shooters that Steve has around him, yeah. But even still, you couldn't have done that for any other coach. Mike D'Antoni would have jumped and thrown a fucking chair at you. I don't give a shit what your 3-point % average is. Like, no, you don't do that. But Steve's like, no, this is how we roll. We're going to pull up from whenever, wherever. We're going to run the score up. Because what you gonna do? You gonna outshoot us?
Yeah, I don't
Probably
know about
not.
Steve Kerr, like the getting into Arizona at the last second and then playing in a legit NCAA conference and going to the NBA. I don't know if I'm buying that. But I mean, Dennis Rodman, which is like one of the episode 2 or 3, talking about like his career. Now that's a cool story. Southeastern Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Like how many NBA players come out of Southeastern Oklahoma State? And then not only to be a player, but what he did with the Pistons, the Bulls, the Spurs. I mean, Rodman was the best rebounder in the league for probably a solid decade. And
Straight up.
He changed the whole franchise. Like the Bulls don't get that second three-peat if it's not for Rodman. And so it was really cool to see his story going from a little tiny school in middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, to being, one of the biggest pieces. And what did he win? 2 rings with the Detroit, and then 3 with Chicago. 5 rings. That's crazy.
And people always had this impression that Dennis was like 6'9" or 6'10" or something, because you always see him banging with bigs and shit. He was barely no taller than Jordan. He just played bigger. He doesn't care. He's a dog. And that's also what made it interesting when you run into the things like, Dennis didn't want to do this. Dennis showed up to do that. Or what? Damn right. Because he knows that when it's time to get back to the court, to quote the great Allen Iverson, practice. We talking about practice? He's not worried about practice. You know what you're going to get from him every single day. And that wasn't a question for the Spurs. It wasn't a question for the Pistons. It wasn't a question for the Bulls. Wasn't a question for Carmen Electra either, or Madonna.
I don't know. Madonna had questions before that was over. So, yeah, I think with Rodman, I don't know. I was not paying enough attention when the moment happened, but there was a lady that came on and was talking about how Rodman was like this singular player that wasn't vital to what they were doing. And I was like, did I mishear that? Or like, what the hell was going on when that lady was talking? Because
they meant was vital. They had to mean was.
Oh my
vital.
God, I don't know. She was like ripping into Rodman. I'm like, why is this in here? Why is nobody saying she's wrong right now? Like, what the hell is this? Like,
clearly she doesn't know how basketball works.
I was like, what happened? Did they just miss the editing?
Like, if you were to just think about it this way, think about how much of Michael Jordan's ass Dennis Rodman whooped while he was over in Detroit. Do you think that if Dennis Rodman wasn't every bit what he was billed as, Mike would have let them put him on his team? No fucking way. On no fucking planet. Mike would have been trying to fucking kill him.
There's a good argument they can't beat the Jazz any of those years because basically as good as Pippen is, but with, the way his back was going and the way his
Pippen couldn't do shit with Karl Malone.
Rodman was the only reason that kept Karl Malone from just tearing that ass up. And I'm not saying they win.
Karl Malone was still putting the work on Rodman too. He was still putting up numbers anyway. So if you don't have Rodman, then how do you guard Karl? He's MVP for a reason. Look at where he is on the all-time scoring list. Like, the mailman delivers.
Like, you look at what he could have done without Rodman being the one to cut him off, and those series are just different because that's a two-man crew for the Jazz. Even when they got those players around him, it's Stockton getting the ball to Malone, and the mailman delivers.
Hey, don't forget about Jeff Hornacek.
Jeff is. It's if we're going to start calling everybody else that's not Jordan and Pippen on the Bulls, just call them role players, which is all I've heard all week from like actual legitimate sports personalities, then Jeff Hornacek is a role player, and I don't give a shit to talk about how good he was. He was really good, but let's not even have those conversations if we're just going to start throwing Horace Grant and Tony Kukoc into the role player bin. Like, what the hell is happening? But those are the conversations we've had this week.
Don't sleep on Greg Ostertag.
He was one of the better big men in the league. Also, that was not exactly the glory days of big men in the league. There were like 4 who were
the best,
the shit, and then everybody else was just some big ass European dude they put at the 5, like whatever they needed to do.
Yeah, in episodes 9 and 10, it talks a lot about the Bulls and Jazz because they played each other obviously in '97, then again in '98, but it's crazy that 98 was a perfect storm for Utah to knock off the Bulls because unlike 97, the Jazz had home court in 98. And then they go down 3-1, and you're thinking, okay, maybe not. Then they get that game 5 to cut it to 3-2. And then in game 6, Stockton hits the 3. The Jazz are winning by 3 with 41 seconds left. And you're thinking, if this goes game 7, Utah's going to get this championship.
Because game 7 isn't even a thing. That's what?
There's no Pippen left. That's a tough game 7 for the Bulls.
That's a game 7 with no Pippen. And you have Jordan in the last 41 seconds gets bucket, steal, bucket. And that was just incredible to go out with his 6th ring in that way. But Utah, I think of all
– they had him dead to rights.
Of all the Bulls' 6 rings, I think Utah in 98 was the one that was the toughest for even though it didn't go to 7, they had it with 40 seconds left. They had it.
I think Reggie's Pacers that was the closest that Bull squad came to not winning a chip. They got more work out of Reggie's Pacers than they did in the finals that year. First of all, on top of being an incredible shooter and a great athlete, Reggie Miller is fucking irritating. He's real smart. He knows how to get you. He's going to stay up under your skin the whole game, and then he's going to pull splash, hit a garbage little drive move. Didn't have the greatest handle in the world, but his sloppy little gangly alien hands did just enough to get the ball into the bucket over and over and over again. He was going to talk as much shit as anybody else, and he was better at it. He's like the Richard Sherman of the NBA, where are there people that are better at this job than him? Sure. Are there a lot of them? Nah.
And nobody has the better resume. That's what Reggie would do year in and year out.
Exactly. This is what he's here for.
You even say the dribbling. He was a much better triple threat than people give him credit for. Like, he had the ability to drive to the basket and get himself to the free throw line.
I'm saying he wasn't like he wasn't the greatest handler, but it was enough to he could create his own shot.
He's not Steph Curry like dribbling between his legs, but it's not like he's one of those shooters who can't dribble. He can put the ball on the floor.
He wasn't no Magic Johnson. All I'm saying is he had a left.
I love that Brandon's right there with me on the Magic Johnson blasphemy of attacking the fact he couldn't dribble left.
Motherfucker didn't have no left hand. I don't care. My dad drove me the whole time growing up until I got a left, mostly because he's left-handed. But the point is, you ain't got no left. You a whack-ass point guard. Even J. Cole called it out. Or no, Mick Jenkins in one of his raps.
Yeah, I think every time you throw on one of those 80s games, you're watching like Lakers Celtics, and you're like, nobody on this court can dribble. Not a single player can dribble. It is crazy. Jeff's got better handles than anybody who's not Magic Johnson on that court. It is crazy. But
I would be a legend if I pulled up on a 1960s team.
Then you would be the next Jordan or the first Jordan.
I'd be the first Jordan.
Brandon's like, I'm the best player in this game. Oh, is that Bill over there? Shit.
All right, cool. I'm retired. I'm retired.
Let's take a break.
Throw my jersey up to the rafters.
I hurt my calf. I can't be out there today.
Call
me back next week.
And then it would be his ankle. And then it would be his knee. And then it would be his calf muscle.
Hey, look.
You're just describing us trying to go hoop. That's not the
right.
60s
Hold
Brandon.
on.
That's Brandon today.
That's just me being 30. That's all that is.
Don't lie. That's you being 25.
Yeah, no, that was me at 25 too. Everything hurts and I don't wanna. These are Instagram muscles. I'm not actually in any kind of shape.
It's been a tough couple of years for Brandon. I'm trying to think. We'll go around the table. We'll start with Jeff. Anything that we haven't discussed that really stood out from this documentary?
Man. I liked how Reggie Miller referred to Jordan as the Black Cat or Jordan. He never
I love how he left that as the last one too. Like that was great. He makes the whole list. You're like, wait, why is that one the last one? But that's good stuff.
I loved it. I loved Reggie Miller. I loved how much he hated Jordan too. I loved seeing them clash like they did. I'm glad the docu showed how much.
But then they also love each other too, because Reggie was still pulling up at fucking Space Jam camp. You know what I'm saying? You only can hate somebody so much and still get there.
You can't miss
Isaiah wasn't at Space Jam camp.
Yeah, Isaiah was done at that point though. But yeah, even if he wasn't, he ain't showing up his face.
It didn't matter. Isaiah was the best goddamn point guard in the league, and he didn't make the dream team. That speaks volumes. Because it wasn't just Jordan. Nobody wanted to play with Zeke.
And then it was fun to see Carol Baskins yelling behind the sidelines.
I'm going to cover you in sardine oil, you
Yeah.
motherfucker.
That's that almost awesome Jazz fan yelling at the Bulls. You fucking idiots.
Colin, it's on your short list.
Just two things. I know we talked about Karl Malone. I guess I got a soft spot for the mailman, but that video footage of him on the bus right after he lost probably his last chance to get a ring and just congratulating the team.
When he went to the Lakers.
I thought
that was a chance for somebody to hand him a ring. He wasn't winning a ring.
That was a Kevin Durant situation.
So no, I thought that was cool. Some of the footage was really cool from the '98 season that we had never seen before. They got some locker room footage that was some fun clips. But we talked a little bit earlier about Jerry Krause. But I thought that we all know how MJ feels about Jerry Krause, and we all know that he had final say on the documentary, and he was going to paint Jerry Krause in a certain light, and I get that. But that clip at the end when Scottie Pippen is talking about how Jordan was the greatest player, Phil was the greatest coach, Jerry Krause is the greatest GM, I thought that was really strong, and I respect Pippen a lot. So
That's
I thought that was
especially because Pippen got the most fucked off out of anybody's fucking money.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I guess I got to ask that. That's actually a pretty good transition. So towards the end of the doc, that's the final question that they have, and they don't dive too far into it, but they just give us that little bit. The idea of coming back for one more season, basically Jerry Krause and Reinsdorf are basically saying this is not really possible just because you can't bring him back for 1 year. Everybody's going to go somewhere. And Jordan rattles it off. He's like, all these players would have came back. And I think at the end of the day, Pippen would have. But when you think of how upset Pippen was, when you think of his body breaking down in that final game, and you think of the fact that he just worked his ass off to get to this giant contract that the Bulls were never going to give him, is it even possible that Pippen comes back?
Pip comes back under one circumstance, and it's that the other players take enough of a pay cut to get that man a check. A well-deserved check at that point in his career as well. The fact that, the sixth and seventh man on the team for 4 fucking championships, spanning even outside of the years that he had to hold it down while Jordan was gone, that year and a half or whatever, it's 6th and 7th man on the team making more money than the second best basketball player on the planet, arguably. And that is nuts. But like I said, arguably. We weren't talking about positions or nothing.
We have a couple years when he didn't have Jordan, and while his numbers did show up that he's top 5, never showed that he was top 2.
He's top 2 if Jordan's on the court.
All right.
On his team or not.
So
I don't think it would matter. I think Jordan's presence being there, Pippen, he knows what Jordan's about. He knows what he's got to bring to the table. Because you have to assume when they're at practice, if Jordan is running one of the teams, Pip's probably running the other team. Because what they gonna do? Have Jordan and Pip run over a bunch of scrubs? That's boring.
Let me ask you this: if you were the Bulls and you have Michael Jordan on your team at his best, don't you feel like you almost could put like anybody besides a person that you're gonna pay a lot of money to next to him to even win the championship?
That sounds like a good idea, except that the first 7 years of his career, dude has been the best basketball player in the world since at least 3 years before he gripped his first fucking championship. So, no, you can't just put anyone. It had to be a specific type of player. And also, you needed the right coach because Jordan's it's kind of like the Tom Brady thing where that kind of personality is going to fit a certain style. And with Brady and Belichick, that shit worked. If you plug and play any other quarterback in that spot, doesn't work quite as well. And we're about to find out in Tampa, obviously with much less arm strength, but whether or not Tom's brain operates as well without his coach. I think that Jordan is still the greatest basketball player of all time, regardless of Scottie. And I think Scottie is still top 5 regardless of Jordan. But together, they're the most dynamic duo that they cover all the bases. The only thing better than that would be like, I don't know, if you're playing twos, I guess you take Shaq and Kobe because fuck you gonna do about Shaq. But I mean, you know how I feel about Shaq. That's the most dominant basketball player to ever basketball.
Yeah. I mean, he has those years that rival what Jordan did on his greatest run, what rivals what LeBron did on his greatest run, and it ends only because of the backlash that they have, Kobe and
Him and
Shaq
Kobe, all the issue.
And then when he leaves, we watch him. Part of it is Shaq just never had that same ability to stay in shape. He was never going to have as long of a career. One, because of his size, and two, because he didn't want to put in that same time and effort that those other
and
players
he picked
did.
up that many that quick anyway.
Yeah.
And imagine if Penny Hardaway keeps 2 fucking ankles.
Shaq was leaving anyways, whether Penny kept the ankles. But I think when you see how he transitions to play with Wade, you know that Shaq has, he's more than just I need the ball, But at the same time,
he's brilliant. He's fucking brilliant. It's not enough to just be big. If being big was enough, then there's a couple of 7'5" fucks that would have been dominant in the league. Like, and not to take anything away from, like Wilt Chamberlain back in his heyday and whatnot, nobody his size with near his level of skill. In Shaq's era, there are great big men. Like, he's playing with Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon. Like, there are Dikembe Mutombo, and that motherfucker was tall as you tall. And Shaq was still too much for everyone. There's the only person I've seen be more dominant in doing what they're doing is probably Simone Biles. Maybe Venus Williams. Not Venus, Serena. Maybe Serena Williams. Simone Biles, Serena Williams, Shaq. That's the most dominant. That's not that head and shoulders above anyone else that's supposed to do what they're supposed to do. And every time you see someone go, oh, they're going to be the next Shaq, they stopped saying it. Dwight Howard's going to be the next. No, the fuck he's not. Nobody is. There's
Dwight
not
had
a
a pretty good career though.
He's had a great career. He's had a great second run too. It ain't Shaq. Who's the next Shaq supposed to be? That his position doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Nobody will ever look like what Shaq is, but it's just a different version. It's like the fact that you think the triangle isn't actually dead. Everything
the triangle is not dead.
We're not
the
having this
triangle is not
conversation.
dead.
We've already had too long of a podcast for this asinine bullshit. So, Colin,
love you too.
If Scottie Pippen isn't drafted, if Jerry Krause doesn't make that move to pull him in, how many championships does Jordan win?
Less than 3.
Hey, fuck you, son. You wildin'.
I'm
sorry. I didn't mean that. But kind of like fuck you. What?
I think he gets a couple. I think the Bulls without Pippen, they don't ever get a 3-peat. I guarantee that. I think they're really good. I think Jordan gets a lot of MVPs. I think Jordan gets rings. But I think that Pippen made the team so good for so long. And obviously we could talk about how he was underpaid. But the Bulls – getting 1 3-peat hardly ever happens. To get 2 of them is
you
just
know what?
insane.
I recant my previous statement. I agree with you because ain't no way you were getting. I was gonna say like you can get somebody of like comparable talent. It's not like Scottie Pippen was Michael Jordan or something. Like you can find somebody of comparable talent, but not for that price. Not for that fucking price. Mm-mm. That
we
nigga
know
is
that,
he is 10 wings for $5 good. You can't beat that with a fucking stick, no.
we know that Kraus and Reinsdorf were never going to pay anybody else anything either. So it's not like you're like, I'll get somebody like Pippen, but pay a little bit more. No, it was just never going to happen. You weren't going to be able to get another person in the door.
I don't know what it is about Chicago. They don't pay people.
Jeff, what's your answer? How many championships does Jordan win without Pippen?
I think I have to go. I have to agree with Colin on this one. I think three is probably the top number. I think he gets to. I think he's like almost LeBron at this point, considerable to LeBron's numbers. I don't think he. Yeah, I think 3 is his top.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't know if it's 3. It's definitely not 2 3-peats. And then
It's
I think
5. It's 5 all day.
when we have the conversation, it becomes instead of he won 3 straight again, and then we pretend he didn't lose the year before the second 3-peat. Like, I think it becomes over the course of 8 years, maybe he wins 4 or 5, but it looks a lot different. It is not this unstoppable force.
I do love the fact that the entire world just glosses over the fact that the Magic smacked the shit out of the Bulls.
Okay, he lost his.
Again,
I guess.
those are things I remember from my childhood.
He was prepping for Space Jam.
He had baseball body. He had baseball body. That wasn't even a fair fight. Nah. He played almost half the season. They rolled out there, and Shaq and Penny smacked the shit out them boys. That is what it is. But that part, he remembered what it was like when he first was trying to climb his way up the mountain in the first place. He was like, oh shit, is that defeat? Never again shall I taste defeat.
I feel like he played better after that broken foot than he did after coming back from baseball. So there's no way you can use Space Jam as an excuse why you didn't play well. No way.
No,
it was like in baseball, a lot of your power comes from your lower area, like hips and down. It's all in how fat your thighs are. And
baseball body and basketball body are basketball body are two very very different things.
They are different, but like they talked about it like it was like none of the muscles make sense anymore. It's like it's all upper body at this point. It's like if you're like Jose Canseco taking steroids, like what are you talking about?
No, but you got to think about it.
He had no upper body strength. He was swinging like he had no idea what the game of baseball was.
He was swinging like he was trying to learn how to use his hips. He was trying to learn how to use his hips.
He never got the baseball body. He was swinging like he's still doing the basketball workout.
Yeah, and I doubt that they brought him on to hit homers. They brought him on to hit the baseball and run to the base.
Hey, yo, word on the street is that, he's maybe 1,500 at-bats. So, I'm sorry, 150 at-bats away from being a legit MLB, big league player.
I do want to point out I am not trying to join
because of how fast he was learning that part. Because it's still Michael Jordan. If you taught Tom Brady how to play fucking anything tomorrow, 2 days from now, you're gonna be like, shit, will you chill out? And then 6 months from now, you'll be like, yeah, no, I'm just gonna roll over to Tom's place and get my ass whooped again. You know how that kind of person is and how they dig into shit. There's no way Jordan wasn't going to, given enough time, he would have made it to the major leagues just off of athleticism and raw force of will.
I think it's very tough to make the major leagues. I think I do want to fight the narrative that they have that he wasn't good in the minors and it was so awful when he went, because I'm making fun of his swing because I think it's undoubtedly, you watch the swing, anybody who knows anything about baseball, that swing was ugly even as he was starting to bat near 300. He was the final month he was playing, it was 275. So when they end it with that 200, it's like, yeah, he batted in 31 runs, which doesn't happen in that league in Birmingham. It doesn't go down. Like, it definitely doesn't go down for somebody who hasn't played baseball in 14 years. So what he did was an amazing accomplishment. When they start to pull him down, it's because they're trying to do the same perspective people have when they're like championships or it doesn't count. It was like, oh, you're not as good as major league players? Of course he's not. He hasn't played baseball in 14 years, and that might be the hardest thing in the world to do.
It's like if I just threw Jeff behind my bar on a Saturday night and was like, all right, get us through this rush. Well, first of all, where the fuck do y'all keep the Malibu?
I don't know where the Jack Daniels is. I don't even know where the ice is. Are there glasses in this joint?
Cheers.
Well, Jeff can find the Jack Daniels, but the rest of the job might be tough for him. So, yeah, no, the way they talk about it is nonsensical. And, I have heard that, he couldn't hit a curveball, which is one thing, but there are baseball players that have made it to AAA.
Do you know how hard it is to hit a fucking curveball?
It's very hard.
From a pro pitcher.
So
yeah, there's no fucking way.
I got a homie that used to pitch for fucking Tennessee, and he would just fuck with us every once in a while just to like throw some crazy shit at us just to see if we can see it. No, you can't fucking see it. He had a almost 90-mile-an-hour fastball, which, don't worry, almost 90 is fucking plenty for the rest of us. No, you can't see the goddamn thing, let alone hit it. And a curveball, you will be so convinced that that ball is about to hit you square in your shit. You'll freeze before you ever think about swinging the fucking bat and then watch it get caught fucking a foot off the plate clean across from you. No. To switch from this ball is going directly where I threw it to how are you making that little bag of leather dance its way over here? No, that's not the same thing. Again, it's like taking a fucking American football player and telling them you play soccer now. Fuck yourself.
I will say my batting average against the curveball would be pretty much the same as the fastball. They'd both be 0, so it doesn't really matter. I don't like any of the narrative about that. It was wrong when it happened, and the fact that you have Terry Francona saying, 1,500 at bats, he's going to make it. And it's like, oh, he's just saying that. It's like Terry Francona isn't just walking around being nice to people for no reason.
He's not blowing smoke up nobody's ass.
He saw how amazing it was. Now, at the end of the day, Jordan went in at an age where you can be a baseball prodigy and not make it to the major leagues in 7 years. What's the guy for the Royals? Bubba Starling? Like, you could be stuck down there for a very long time. Jordan was already 34. Like, I can't guarantee he'd make the majors, but stop talking like he was a bum when he tried out for baseball. He's not a Tim Tebow. He actually did some stuff while he was down there. Like, come on, guys.
But with that said, he's not a Bo Jackson where he went over to another sport and was an immediate all-star like Bo Jackson or Deion Sanders. That shit is not easy. Like, when you hone in on a sport to the degree that you play at a D1 level or at a pro level, other stuff is just recreational at that point.
All right, we've talked about Jordan. It's something he could do. Brandon's still talking into the ether right now. We've been on a while. Do we want to transition from baseball, something that Jordan, it gets a bad rap for, to
being the best basketball player in the world again? How do you
see? That was a good transition. That was perfect. So, do we want to have the conversation? GOAT. We've had it in spurts throughout this podcast. Do we want to have the full combo?
The GOAT basketball or GOAT sports in general?
Yeah, no.
Or baseball.
We're gonna go basketball because everything else is too much for me right now.
The GOAT basketball player, it has to be Michael Jordan for, one, his on the court accomplishments, two, what he's done for the sport as a whole globally. Like, Stephon Marbury has a fucking statue in China. If no Michael Jordan, Stephon Marbury does not have a fucking statue in China. Nigga has a tattoo of a star on the side of his face. You don't get a fucking statue made of you in a foreign land with a tattoo on the side of your face without selling millions of records. Either. It's not even. He should have put it up in the corner if it was that, with the little ones around it. No, nothing like that. I'm saying, like, basketball is one of the it's like running right behind soccer at this point as far as being the biggest sport in the world. And Mike had a big bit to do with that. These young players are making money now. Ain't nobody ever gonna have to be as good as Scottie Pippen in comparison to their peers and get paid like Scottie Pippen in comparison to the rest of their peers. That's a thing that will no longer happen, and that's a result of that whole I'm gonna call it a dynasty, a regime. I feel like regime because Jordan was the goddamn emperor, but Jerry Krause was the shogunate. And
It's good Japanese
Uh,
references. I took a samurai class. That all checks out with me. So I do want to say for that's legacy, which obviously I think based on the time frame when it happened, like Jordan is the guy, and there's really no comparing it. There will never be somebody else because Jordan not only matched the right time when basketball had the chance to expand the way it did, he did it so perfectly that there's just nobody else that could have pulled off what he pulled off.
on just the basketball part itself, Shaq.
So
Shaq.
we got Brandon's quick answer. Jeff, can anybody compare to Jordan the player?
The player, I like Jordan a lot. I think he is the GOAT. I think there's no question about it. You talk about the mental toughness, the shots that he did on the court, and then that Nike deal, making as much money as he still does. And Jordans are going to live through our lifetime and beyond. For that alone, he has to be considered a GOAT off the court as well as on the court for his amazing jump shots and finishing ability. And the way he was able to hold his team together too was also amazing. Something that LeBron will never do.
Yeah, it helps though that there was a limited free agency rules that Jerry Krause put the rest of the team together and Jordan didn't have to go anywhere. But yeah, let's pretend it's LeBron's fault. Colin, somebody who will actually talk about what happened on the court and still attack LeBron. Is there anybody that can compare to Jordan as a player?
So I think that I'll start by saying I have Jordan number one, but I think it's very close. There's some players that are not far behind. I would say Kareem and LeBron, as far as their ability to be the best basketball player in the world. I don't think anyone's ever going to score more points than Kareem. But
Kareem is Babe Ruth. He's a legend, but who the fuck was he playing?
Anyway, he's behind Jordan. So I think that Jordan's ability on both the offensive end and the defensive end, and in the playoffs when the game mattered most, Jordan was going to score the points. And so for me, it's Jordan, but he's number one. I don't think anyone will ever pass him, but he's number one for me.
Yeah, and I'm pretty close to that. I have Jordan number one. I think the big thing for me is too many people do two things. The number one, I'll just knock out immediately. If you put Kobe in the same sentence, we're not having the conversation because you don't understand basketball. Kobe is a top 12 all-time player. He is nowhere close to the conversation of top 3 players. I agree with Colin's list.
If you put Kobe over Bird, I have an issue with
Bird's close though, because Bird is the longevity isn't there. So then you're going like, okay, it's prime versus Kobe played for 20 years, and there's a lot there.
There's a lot of garbage years.
If you're going 4 to 12, there's a lot of arguments back and forth for all these guys. There are a lot of interchangeable players. But when you're talking about the best and you're at that top 3 spot, I think it is Kareem at 3. And then you got like, I'd probably put Magic at the 4 or 5. Like it's really tough right there of who's closing in on it.
Magic ain't got no left.
But like Kareem is still distant to Jordan and LeBron. And I think at this point, if you think that LeBron couldn't catch him, if you think that LeBron couldn't finish with 3 championships, become, Colin was talking about Kareem being the all-time points leader. Without COVID and with LeBron playing the five more years, the way he's still playing at his age, he will be the all-time points leader. He will be one of the top rebounders and assist leaders. He will have all of these accolades, and he'll have shown that if he can play the way he's playing right now at 38, 39, something that only Kareem was able to play at that elite level at that age,
and he was getting his ass whooped
LeBron can close that gap. And I think once you get to those 6 championships and you have that longevity, if you say at that point, like LeBron can never pass him, I think you are going and leaning too much on legacy, because on the court player, that's the only thing that separates Michael Jordan and LeBron. When you look at the numbers, that's it. These are 2 of the guys who played at an elite level, put teams on their back, and they were these scorers that were still extremely efficient and did so much else on the court. When you talk about defense, LeBron doesn't get nearly enough credit for what he can do as a defender. When he turns it on, he shuts people down, and we see it in the postseason. We're going to talk about championships. What happens in the postseason matters more than the regular season. I don't need to know about when LeBron walks up the court at 35 years old and doesn't play games.
If you have a half a brain and you're drafting a basketball team, even knowing all of the things about both of the players and up until now, if we're taking one off the board to go build a team, I would draft LeBron James before I drafted Michael Jordan because, one, dude's 6'8" and can play all 5 positions on the court. He's a better coach than your coach. He never gets in trouble. And that is a thing. To be able to cage the ego of a literal superhuman is the hardest thing in the world. You can't tell a young athlete shit. He's bigger than you, he's stronger than you, he's faster than you. He didn't have to go to college and he's richer than you. And you have to convince him to play with others. LeBron came in wanting and willing to play with others. And that's a thing that, like, I get what Jordan said, leadership comes with a price and, you're not here to make friends with everybody. But LeBron proved that you can go build a dynasty by making friends with everybody.
There's actually a lot of players who didn't have the Jordan killer mindset, quote unquote, that won championships without being an asshole to everyone. Like, it's surprising, but turns out a lot of sports, people can do it. It's crazy.
Side note, if LeBron goes 3-0 in the finals the rest of his career, which he won't, then he still won't have a winning record in the finals. So
the fact of the matter, though, is that if he goes to the finals 3 more times, look at how many more visits to the finals he's gotten than
Colin's
Jordan.
putting that as a negative because he's a hater.
No. Here's the thing. LeBron went to the finals 8 years in a row. That's incredible.
That's obscene.
No one's gonna ever do that again. It
is almost a foregone conclusion for straight up a decade. LeBron James is going to be in the finals. Who is he playing against? That's Jim Kelly, but for basketball. Well, he's going to show up. He might not win, but he's going to show up. And also, bruh, at what point were any of the LeBron teams as good as any of the championship Bulls teams? And I'm saying comparatively to the rest of the field of play around them, not individually. Most of those LeBron teams would beat those Bull teams just because the game progresses and people get better. But compared to the field of play around them, LeBron is bringing in fucking C students into this thing, whereas Jordan was bringing in a whole bunch of C, B, and a couple of A students because Horace Grant wasn't no fucking slouch the first run. John Paxson is the goddamn man. We already talked about Scotty. It's a whole different thing where LeBron is winning chips with, don't worry, I'll wait.
I mean, he has good players, but it's like 2 players. It's like it's 2 and then the list ends. I think when you
have to count on J.R. Smith consistently, that tells me what kind of lifestyle you're leading.
Yeah, that's his fault. He kept wanting he asked for J.R. Smith. So this is where we get to the LeBron blaming. Like, he decided to have J.R. Smith on his team. He just kept asking for it. I don't know why, but he kept wanting it.
That's fair.
So I think
it worked out a couple times.
When you look at what LeBron did, and you talk about like finals losses, his first loss against the Spurs in 2007, he is a 22-year-old, and he marched that god-awful Cavs team to the finals. And Jordan was in a similar position with his crappy Bulls team in the 80s. He had amazing performances in the playoffs, but he was losing in the second round and the first round to really good teams. I'm not going to fault him for it, but he couldn't drag those teams no matter how many points he put up, no matter what he did. LeBron's like, this is easy, right? Like, this
Jordan's
is what should happen every year.
We're getting stabbed in the paint, so
he got Anderson Varejao a Defensive Player of the Year award or a Defensive All-Team award. Like, the fact that he did that is amazing.
Impressive.
Like,
that is impressive,
and that's the only defensive team award for any of his teammates. Like, Pippen was every year in the 90s.
Oh, all first team.
And then you throw in Rodman, you throw in a lot of good defenders. LeBron's running out there, and Anderson Varejao only got that first team defensive honor because it was the LeBron halo effect. They were a really good team. Like, got to give it to somebody. They're playing good defense, right? Who's doing this? I guess it's Anderson Varejao as a rim protector.
My favorite thing about that second three-peat of Bulls runs is that basically that whole team, and the reason that I think that teams nowadays would have issue if in the matchup, that whole team was like all NBA defense, either first, second, or third team. Like everybody wanted all the smoke all the time, with the exception of like Steve Kerr. But
always that point guard. I don't know why they never could get a point guard that guarded, except Ron Harper, who was just a shot guard who couldn't shoot, and Jordan had the position
I was about
on
to say,
lock.
you talking about the tallest fucking point guard in the history of the world?
They're like, he's a point guard, and everybody's like, sure. He's a point
Sure,
guard.
we'll go with that.
Wherever you need to put him on the court, that's fine.
He's a shot guard, or rather, he's a point guard. Fucking Draymond Green's a power forward. Whatever it's got to be. Whatever you need to do. Somebody's got to hit the court.
All right, so I'm going to give you guys one last hit. Anything left that we need to talk about? Jordan, the documentary, COVID life without sports. Jeff, we'll start with you.
Put me on the spot here, starting with me all the time.
I'll go Colin first. Colin.
Go Colin first.
Jeff,
Yeah.
Jeff's not a professional. He's not professional.
I am not.
He tried to shoot that video vertical, and I had to get him to stop that. Not a professional. Colin, go.
I am not. I don't get paid for this.
None of us get paid for this.
I didn't think I'd ever be able to survive almost 2.5 months without sports, and I've done it. It hasn't been fun, but I'm hoping in the next month or two we get it back. But this documentary provided an insight of I remember watching a lot of those finals, as a kid, but just getting to see some behind the scenes footage made it really fun. So sign me up for all the sports documentaries. Give me some more. I need something now that it's over.
Was this a joke that Lance Armstrong has one coming out on ESPN soon? I saw a picture. I'm like, is this real?
Make my fucking day.
I think it was a meme, but I'm never sure anymore.
I don't give a shit about cycling. I will dig in on that one.
Yeah. I'll watch any of that. I was so excited for this summer.
You get to fuck Sheryl Crow with one testicle. I need to know how.
I thought we were going to get the Olympics this summer. I thought we'd be in the middle of the NBA NHL playoffs right now. Anyway, none of that's happening. But hopefully we all get through this. And then finally, I'm just sad that I won't get to see LeBron leave his hometown a third time. But at least I got to see it twice.
You give it to
Rude. All right, Brandon, your closing statement you gave during one of the times the camera froze. Jeff, what do you have to say before we get on out of here?
So I've been to get out of the house. I've been trying to plan a float trip for about 3 months, trying to get everybody on board. But every time I go to reserve a cabin, it's taken away from me. The cabin's not there. So I don't have sports. I don't have a float trip to go on. I don't know what to do in my life during this.
Who is strong enough to pick up a whole cabin? That's rude.
Yeah. Hercules. But this Jordan documentary did bring a lot of light into our world. It was fun to see some behind the scenes. I wish we would have got a little bit more negative. I wish we would have got to see a little bit more fights between him and his co-players, and that would have been a lot
non-disclosure agreement. You know damn well that wasn't making TV.
Yeah, I think we got enough of it afterwards. Horace Grant had to come out and tell us how the documentary was bullshit. So he wasted no time to give us that part that we were missing during the doc. I think for the last little bit, my little closing, I want to make sure that I don't turn this into a LeBron podcast for no reason when this is clearly supposed to be about Jordan. So I do want to say that when we talk about the legacy, I think Brandon hit a lot of the key points. It is without a doubt the best legacy. There's no argument. I can go all day about why LeBron might be the better player, or at least in the same league, but nobody is in the same category in terms of legacy because he has the best story. He's an elite modern player who kind of has that classic story to him because it's an ancient epic. He's better than Gilgamesh. His setbacks, they were minor, only serving to say he's human, as he proved his achievements were fit for the gods. If we talk about the best player who walks on the court, greatest skill set, there are some players we can put in the category, but it's a different question than greatest legacy. Jordan expanded the game internationally through his stardom. He had the greatest impact on the game before he ever got the second three-peat. That if he only had 2 titles, that might have remained true. Hell, I believe even 1. I will give Brandon credit. If he had 0, maybe he's a Barkley, maybe he's a Karl Malone. We value rings too much to give him the credit, but I don't think he had to win a ring to be the best player in the NBA for at least 12 of his 14 years in the league. That's just the truth. He didn't need to win the championship to prove it, but he was in the right place, the right time, the right scenario. He found himself in the biggest moments, and that's when he shined the brightest. I could spend all day trying to check the narrative, telling people they're looking at it the wrong way, but there's no real reason for me to try to demystify a player whose legacy will always remain mystical. The way he wins the 2 3-peats, Colin said it earlier, that just doesn't happen. He did it twice, and he didn't need to have the potential of what would have happened if he would have won in 99. What would have happened if he played a full season and didn't leave for baseball, and that ruined two opportunities where the Rockets get a win. None of that matters because everybody still wants to be like Mike.
Shout out the dream.
Yeah. And Carol Baskin murdered her husband.
It's a good point.
That's legit too.
That's
I'm just saying,
point
like,
there,
that's
Jeff.
a hell of a way to kill 2 years. Like, it's like, oh shit, is Mike on? Bet. Try and get this money real quick before he come back. He did what he was supposed to do. You know you wasn't gonna get it while Mike was here, so shit, grab it while he ain't.
Hey, he's the only one who got to pull it off. Everybody else got shut out by Jordan. He made a lot of careers fit that Charles Barkley mold. They were great, but are they really great if they don't got a ring? And Jordan took it away from a lot of really great players. That's it. That's all we have.
Decade worth of Hall of Famers that will never get a fucking ring. That's hilarious.
Oh, and Colonel Baskin's created the coronavirus as well.
Why do you have so much Carol Baskin stuff? I did the Tiger King pod like a month ago. That's it. That's all we have for the Q crew.
Q crew.
I hope you enjoy these lovely faces because we're going to keep having them on, especially in the next couple weeks. We're going to talk about whatever it is. Send it in. If you want to jump on YouTube and tell us what to review, I got some time. I'll start watching stuff on Hulu. Me and Colin, we're going to talk about Dave. If anybody's got time, watch it because that's going to happen soon. Jeff, what have you been watching?
I might dive in on that too because Dickie is just so good.
So good.
He's good.
Currently, my 2-year-old. That's what I'm watching.
So that's a good show. I don't think it will get very good ratings. Netflix will not pick it up for a second season.
It might, though.
Does it drink yet? Because if it doesn't drink, we're not going to watch.
But that's out.
It drinks dog water.
We're gone.
Oh.
Later,
Right,
folks.
Maybe.
Peace.
Okay, love you guys. Bye.